This episode of the QA is brought to you by Lucky Shot. It is the end of the month, which means it is time for the QA. It is a wonderful fall day. Now, I know last month I said it was probably going to be the last outside QA, but we did have a couple of really nice days, so this is probably the last one. Although, who knows, maybe we'll have a great November as well, but usually in November around Thanksgiving time, it's like winter and snow. But anyways, it's not quite as nice the weather as last month, so instead of shorts and a t-shirt, I do have a hoodie and a warm beverage, but nonetheless, it's going to be a good QA, and I have a dog who's, playing with some toys, so apologize for the noise. All right, before we get started, I want to thank you very much for spending a few minutes of your day spending it with me on the QA. My name is Dave Tim from Guns and Tactics, and this is the show where we answer your questions. So if you want to see your question on the show, the best way is to email us. The email address is shown below. That is the QA@gunsandtactics.com. Now, we did have some email server issues. We switched servers, so I did miss some emails. I'm going to be doing my very best to get caught up on emails, and I got to get some prizes out as well. So I do appreciate your patience with that, especially when we had the Nifty 50 episode as well. So I really do appreciate that. Let's just do a quick comment cleanup here real quick. And basically just some really kind words from CZ Junkie, John, Seafair NH. I appreciate it. And yeah, so just some nice thank yous and hellos and things like that. We had a good amount of questions come in this month. We had 9 different people ask several different questions, so there's actually going to be a ton of questions. And before we get started, I do have to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Lucky Shot. They're going to be supplying the prize. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe if you like the content. You can get this on our social media platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. That's right. Coming new, we're going to make the QA its own podcast. So that'll be kind of cool for those of you guys that do like to listen in the car, on the road, jogging, whatever. You can now hopefully get this very soon, if not by the time you're listening to this, wherever you get your podcasts. Search for Guns and Tactics. Hey, of course, the dog has to play with their toys right here in front of the camera. That's how. So before we get into the questions, I also did just want to share one thing to you guys, and that is, again, how much I do appreciate the viewers of the QA. You guys, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, like the inner circle, you guys are, if I did have to pick a cult following of viewers, it would probably be you guys that consistently watch. And I know it's not the most viewed videos that I do, but I do appreciate the comments and the feedback and, kind of some of the messages and stuff, so I appreciate that. And I really hope you guys are enjoying fall. It's been a super hectic month for me. I've been doing a ton of install videos for a new client, so that has been keeping me swamped, quite frankly, of not being able to make more videos, so I do apologize for that. And then I did finally take a little bit of family time, and I was able to spend some time with my son, and we were able to enjoy this beautiful fall weather, and we actually went out on a great side-by-side ride, and we just had an awesome day. So I hope you guys are doing the same, enjoying the autumn or getting out and spending time with your friends or family while we still have them around. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and no matter what your beliefs are on it, just know that things happen. Things happen fast, things happen rapidly, and I just want you guys to enjoy the time that you're able to spend with those that you enjoy spending time with. And as a good friend of mine has said before, find your Wisconsin. And what that means is we all want to go on these huge, big adventures, but sometimes we can find something small that's obtainable, that's doable, and we can accomplish that, and we can have just as much joy out of finding your Wisconsin. So that's for you. You know who you are. Just wanted to say thanks because I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and yesterday I found my Wisconsin, even though I didn't go to Wisconsin, but I just had a great time with some friends and family, and my boy was riding with me for the whole day, and it was a great day. I hope you guys are enjoying the same. All right, let's get to it. We got a lot of things to go over. Question number 1 is from Paul. What, if any, dry fire systems would you recommend? Looking at Mantis, Strikeman, Coolfire, Training Lasers, Pink Rhino, and others. And actually, this is something that I definitely want to do some winter content on, is like indoor practice. Minnesota gets cold, we're not out shooting as much at the range. If you can go to like indoor ranges that have leagues and things like that, definitely do that. But dry fire is definitely something I want to do some content on. So some of the things I'm going to be looking at or sharing with you is airsoft, my laser cert guns that I use, as well as you know, different manipulation drills. And then I am going to hopefully pick up a Mantis X Elite because I think that system has a lot of promise as well. And I want to do some focused videos on all of that. But right now what I do is I mainly use my SIRT gun, which is a laser gun. I have an AR and a Glock that I do various drills with. And then I also picked up an airsoft gun, but I haven't done a ton of it yet, but I want to set up some stuff either in the garage or out in the backyard where I can maybe do some airsoft drills as well. And then also get maybe the Mantis X as well, because I think there's a lot of cool things with that. So great question. I love the idea and I want to do some more indoor focused stuff with that. Question number 2 is from Art. Just following up with you, and I apologize, Art, this did not make it on the September one. We got a prize out to you as well. But thoughts on the effectiveness of a 7.5-inch barrel for 5.56? Is it giving up too much velocity and accuracy to be worth the compactness and packability? Should that length be reserved for rounds such as the 300 Blackout? I would obviously recommend 300 Blackout for something that short, and I think most 300 Blackout barrels are, you know, around that 8 to 9 inch. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you're ever planning on suppressing that gun, most suppressor companies do have a minimum barrel length as well, so you want to make sure you abide by that. So the short barrel definitely can be effective at certain distances, but you are losing a lot of velocity, and a lot of .223 ammunition, in order to be effective, does require a certain amount of velocity. Now, my favorite short barrel rifle round is probably either Hornady or the Gold Dot 75 grain. Both are 75 grain, but they are designed for short barrel rifles, and they're designed to still expand and perform with lower velocities. Now, you're probably not going to get that low velocity threshold met with a 7.5-inch barrel. Not to mention, a lot of 7.5-inch guns are really finicky when it comes to reliability because they have such a short dwell time. So while it could work, it might be a little tricky, and I'm not sure if it's really worth it. However, the Maximum Defense guns, those are short, the PDX, those are fun guns to fire, and they are available in 300 Blackout, 5.56, 7.62 by 39, and those guns run. My experience with those guns and uppers have been very positive. You can check out my first look video there, but that is a really cool compact weapon system, and there's some suppressor stuff in the works. But again, keep in mind with that minimum barrel requirements, there's a lot of suppressors that will say, hey, minimum barrel length needs to be this, that, whatever. So keep that in mind. But generally, I would say if you want to build something super compact like that, I would probably look at a 300 Blackout. And if you are going to go with a 5.56, probably around that minimum of 10.5, and then again use an appropriate round that is designed to run and perform reliably in gel tests with SBRs. My favorite, Federal Gold Dot 75 grain. This one is from Jim. Where can I find a Kydex competition holster for an F9S long slide left hand? Who does an optic cutout for an F9S long slide? I would check out the Safariland. I believe it's the 578. It's the GLS system. It's their universal system. And I believe that one also will work with an optic. Otherwise, it could be modified to work with an optic because the retention is on the grip or on the middle finger. It doesn't have the ALS system. Otherwise, I would check out QVO Tactical. Roger makes some awesome holsters. I'm looking forward to getting some holsters from him, and he's a good guy. He makes content as well on his channel, which I think I can put a link to up there. If not, it'll be down in the description. Otherwise, last, Weber Tactical. Weber makes some great Kydex. A lot of guys in the national competition circuit are running Weber stuff, and he could most certainly make something for you for the FN as well. So that would be one to check out. All right, Kevin, now is your questions. And Kevin, you sent a lot. I do appreciate it. You always give me stuff to talk about, so I appreciate it. Some of them might be a little shorter, again, to save time. But let's get right to Kevin's questions. My experience as a red dot instructor, closed red dot emitters falling off either due to error or inadequate designs, fasteners. Do you endorse automotive adhesives? Here's my personal experience, and I run, right now my closed emitter optic of choice is the Holosun 509. I've got them on 4, I'm pretty sure it's 4 different guns. And I haven't had any issues, but I just use, I believe I have purple on 2 of them and maybe like blue on the other 2, 243, but I use either low or medium strength thread locker, and then I use a witness mark. So degrease, proper thread locker, and torque, and I haven't had any issues. Now I'm using a combination of CH plates and 1 Dawson plate for my 509s. Now I did have an Acro. I wasn't impressed with the battery life, so I sold the Acro P1. I'll probably pick up an Acro P2, and then there is a closed emitter that I have not received yet from another company that is not making a closed emitter that we well know of, and that is going to follow an Acro footprint. that'll be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to trying that out as well. But automotive adhesives, you certainly could consider it, but then you also have to consider removal. Is that going to hold more torque than the fastener head can handle? So are you going to strip out that screw or strip out the tool, etc.? So we want to make sure we're not overdoing it, either using something that's too powerful. And obviously we can't use a high heat version because we can't heat up the optic body to remove it. So I would still recommend, I use Loctite 222, Loctite 243, and then again, degrease, proper torque, and I haven't had any issues with mine, but I do make sure I always check witness marks when I'm doing my status checks, which you have another question about, which we'll kind of talk about here as well. What are some techniques as an instructor to help a student overcome the outdated idea to at least convince a student to give a novel technique or idea a try? That's a great question. And I think a lot of it for me is when I teach in my classes, I have a segment called Instructor Craft, and that's where I'm teaching instructors basically how to build rapport and gain credibility with your student. So with that, I always stress to my students, please have an open mind. I realize some of this is going to be new, it's going to be unfamiliar, it's going to be different, but what I want you to do is have an open mind, and then I also explain the why, where the technique came from, the journey of discovery, as Dave Spalding puts it. Where did I learn it from? Where did I craft it myself? Or maybe where I adapted it from. But then explain the why. And I used to do sales, believe it or not, and one of the old sayings that I used to do when I used to teach new salespeople was features tell but benefits sell. And if I can explain the benefits of the technique to the student, so the benefit more than the feature, you know, the how, the what, but the why and the gain, that would generally get me more buy-in. And again, I just taught a class last month at a sportsman's club. And it was a great group of guys, good attitudes, wanted to learn, but a lot of them had different grips than what I would teach. So we had to really spend a lot of time teaching grip, and we had to explain the why behind it. And when people would use the grip, they would notice that their recoil management was better, their presentation was better. However, they kept falling into those old habits. So again, it's all about reinforcement. A big part of it, again, is developing rapport, explaining the why, explaining the benefits, and then demonstrating as well, and then hopefully having them replicate and perform it, and they can see the performance improvements as well. So great question. That might be another, I don't know how we tackle that in its own video, but that I think would be something I wouldn't mind tackling as well, because I do think that there are some instructors who watch, and maybe if I could help them out. And I'm not like the world's best instructor. There are definitely names that are far bigger than mine in the industry, that are far busier than I am, and they do a great job because there are some really, really good people, and maybe I could collaborate or do something. That kind of gives me an idea for a series that, I don't know, we'll see if it can make it happen. I got a lot of ideas going on up here, but I can't always execute them because of time, but I do like the idea. What is the recommended procedure to set red dot brightness for duty or home defense? All the way bright, -1 or 2, depending on your dot. If -1 is still pretty dang bright, then I would maybe go -2. I don't like auto, and here's what I use. Number one, if I take that light in a low light situation and I activate either a flashlight or a weapon mounted light, can I still see the dot? If not, then I might have to go a little brighter. Likewise, if I'm in a super dark situation with no ambient light or whatever, if the dot is way too bright, I might need to go a little bit dimmer, i.e. not full bright. But for me, unlike my Trijicons, my Holosuns, generally speaking, I generally crank it all the way up to the top and then go down -2, and I find that I can still see it with weapon mounted lights. I can still see it through very bright ambient lights, distractionary lights, whatever, but yet I can also still see it in low light, no light situations. So that's kind of my criteria. And I go into more of that in my classes, but all the way up, -1 or 2, depending on your optic, you're golden. Is it okay to shim the disconnector spring on a 2-stage trigger to bring the trigger pull weight up to a higher weight but crisp trigger, or is it better to stick with a standard 9 to 10 pound mil-spec single stage for duty or home use? I wouldn't recommend shimming anything because shims could come out, shim could wear, it could change over time. So personally, what I would do, again, assuming you're talking about an AR when you say mil-spec single-stage trigger for duty use, I personally run good quality triggers from a variety of companies. JP for my single-stage triggers, Geisley for my 2-stage triggers, their SSP for a single-stage trigger, Hyperfire makes a good trigger. I also have a couple other triggers that are coming in for testing that would, I don't know if it necessarily be a duty trigger. The Trigger Tech is going to probably go into a competition gun, and then I can't remember the name of this other one that I have coming out that has kind of a unique trigger shoe, but I'll be checking that out as well. But those would be my go-tos, and I would just say for me, for a minimum for duty is around 4 pounds, and I prefer 2-stage trigger more often than not for my ARs. I still do like some single-stage triggers, and JP makes one, but again, I just kind of find that most of my guns, I have a preference towards a 2-stage trigger. So the Geisley GTUS is a great price point. Their SSA, their SSAE for maybe more of a marksman gun. But I would just do a quality 2-stage trigger. I've tried the LaRue. I went back to the Geisley. The LaRue is cheaper. They're like a little over $100, but for me, I just prefer the Geisley. So that's what I stick with for a good quality 2-stage trigger. I would just buy that. They're basically mil-spec grade, so you shouldn't have any problems getting those approved by most agencies that, you know, allow modifications or enhancements, which we've already talked about that. Should you modify or carry enhanced duty gun, all that stuff right up there. When teaching pistol classes, is it acceptable to teach students that they can rely on a tactile LCI on a pistol instead of a press check? So many females can't do a press check, struggle with it. I'm told that you cannot use the LCI on Gen 3.5 plus Glocks because it is a part that can fail. And then you can kind of talk more about that. So for those that don't know what an LCI is, the LCI is what's called a loaded chamber indicator. And on the Glocks, in Gen 3, they added that with the extractor. So when the extractor is actually hooked on a round, it protrudes slightly from the slide, and therefore you can feel it knowing that there is something in the chamber. Now, could it be an empty casing? Technically it could have, but then like one of your comments was the chances of an empty casing being stuck in there are very slim, and I agree with you, they are very slim. Now, could you have a fail to extract? Absolutely, but most fail to extracts are then going to incorporate a type 3, or a lot of people call it a double feed, but it's not because there's an empty, but basically you would have a different stoppage. However, I suppose technically it would be possible that you had a fail to extract and then a fail to feed, leaving the brass in there or whatever. So, a couple things. You could rely on an LCI. There are guns that have that. The Smith & Wesson M&P has like the cutout on the top so you can look down and see brass. There are other guns that have something similar. You could have the LCI, or you could simply use the magazine as well. The thing I don't like about the LCI is that low light or wearing gloves, things like that, it's not as reliable as a status check where I can either look or feel brass. So another technique is to simply use the magazine. Many magazines have a cutout now that show you the number of rounds, so you can load, make ready with the gun, take out the magazine, look and see if it's 1 round less. If it is, then you know that that round is now in the gun. You can do a firm seat check to make sure that the magazine is seated, and that could be another form of a status check as well, again without requiring the manipulation of the slide. So that might be another technique that you could also incorporate into your toolbox. What are some good ways to help teach why 3-dot night sights are much preferred over 1-dot night sight or black in low light situations? The fad is to use a blacked out rear with 1 dot in the front. That works when there are 12 students, you know, and then we kind of go into a little bit more. You're probably not going to like this, but believe it or not, my preference is actually a 1-dot sight when I'm shooting iron sights. I've kind of transitioned to a plain black rear sight because for me, most night sights, the 3 dots actually don't line up when I line the tops of the sights, which is how most sights are actually true. So the rear might be a little off. Now in a true low light, no light situation, I still have to have some sort of light to identify my target. So I'm still gonna have to see my target, so I have to know where that is. Now, I suppose technically it could be a low light situation where all I'm seeing is a muzzle flash. Could be. But I can still generally see that front sight, and I can make out my rear enough. That's just my personal preference. Now, I'm not saying my opinion is right for everybody, and I often tell people sights are like shoes. Everybody's going to have a different preference. Everyone's going to have a different, comfort. Everyone's going to have a different bias towards sights. Now, if you're a 3-dot shooter, then that's totally okay. I've just generally transitioned to single dot or in a plain black rear. That's my preference. And when I am shooting a red dot equipped handgun, I actually just get plain black sights all the way around because I want the sights to be very low and out of the way. So I just use plain black sights as my backup sights because the chances of my red dot failing are pretty slim. I run reliable, proven equipment, and I generally don't worry about my dot failing. And if I do, then my sights are right there. But again, my carry guns generally have weapon mounted lights, or I carry a flashlight on my person. This little Streamlight Wedge has just been a really cool little EDC light. It's super bright at a 500 or 1,000 lumens, and it carries just like a pocket knife and is rechargeable, so something like that might not be a bad idea as well. But that's my personal preference, and it's okay to disagree, and it's okay to have your own preference on sights. So, but as far as, why teach 3-dot sights if they're much preferred, again, go into the benefits and let the student decide. Some people may prefer it. When you're doing dry fire practice in your house, low light, no light situations, can you see the rear sight? Can you see the front sight? Can you see all of the sight picture? Kind of depends. So, but then again, you also have to ask yourself, how am I identifying my target? So that's a good question. Before we answer the rest of Kevin's questions, let's give a quick shout out to Lucky Shot. Lucky Shot is sponsoring this episode of the QA by donating an awesome prize. Now, maybe you are looking for a present for a firearms or military or vet or law enforcement or hunter or whatever enthusiast in your life, or maybe you're looking for something cool for yourself. Lucky Shot has all sorts of cool gift ideas and they're adding new stuff all the time, so make sure you check out their webpage. Plus, if you want to save a little bit of money on your order, go ahead and use the coupon code that we're showing on the screen to save on your next order at Lucky Shot. Lucky Shot makes really cool signature glassware with real safe projectiles and other cool gift ideas that is sure to be liked and loved by the recipient or yourself and be a great conversation starter as well. I gotta see if they make some coffee cups. So Lucky Shot, I'm gonna be looking that up to see. Thanks again to Lucky Shot for supporting this episode of the QA. We really do appreciate their support. And one lucky question asker is going to get a prize courtesy of Lucky Shot. All right, back to Kevin's questions. Does it make sense to clean pistols with soapy, warm and water to give a flush away the salt, or is it better to clean them with an oily solution? Is there a different method to clean salty firearms that are used in concealed carry warmer weathers? They're full of sweat, etc. Washing would remove the salts. That was common with older guns. And then what is the preferred procedure of bringing a pistol back in service when someone submerges it in icky water, such as an ankle, walking in the swamp, river, or lake? And I'm gonna kind of tackle those two together because they're kind of related. So carry guns, generally I would also recommend, sorry, I wish I could shoot that crow or bird or whatever it is, because it's probably annoyingly loud for you. But I use a water-based ultrasonic cleaner solution, so that definitely is kind of the modern take of soapy water. And then obviously you have to make sure that you reapply a protectant, because the degreasing agent does take care of cleaning, but it also then removes all of the protectant oils and solvents as well that are protecting us from rust and corrosion. So you could certainly do that. Other option is for a carry gun is look at modern finishes, DLC, Cerakote, whatever. I had a SIG old 245 that I carried as a backup gun on my vest, and that thing would rust all the time. The factory finish, just almost at the end of every day it would have rust. So I finally got that blasted and Cerakoted, and that actually held up much better. But I would clean that and also use a good quality rust preventative like Ezox or even the WD-40 rust prohibitor. Those are great products to help protect against rust. So those are great. And then cleaning with soap and water, you could do that, but keep in mind if you're going to use that, you really got to make sure you displace all of the water, because water could then start to cause corrosion and rust. So it's okay to use traditional materials. If you're not having a big problem and you can just do a wipe down with an oily rag daily at the end of your carry routine, give it a quick wipe with an oily rag or something like that, or a rust wipe, those would be ideal solutions as well. Otherwise, the ultrasonic cleaner does work good. And then back in service when it was submerged, if I have guns that have been submerged, heavily rained on, whatever, I've had guns like that, I just go right to the ultrasonic, and that way it gets all of the stuff, it degreases, I'm getting all the gunk and crud and everything else, and then I can usually do a detail inspection and clean, and then apply a new layer of rust preventative and lube, and go from there. So that's a great question. And I've had guys spill soda, I mean, all sorts of stuff, you name it, I've probably heard of it or seen it. So ultrasonic was life-saving as far as cleaning, and you can get a cheap one at like Harbor Freight, and they still do a pretty good job. Last, you got two more. What is the preferred method to wash or clean away large amounts of mud or sand in a pistol or AR after a training class? Actually, then I would go right back to the ultrasonic again. Before you throw stuff in the ultrasonic, as you're taking things apart, field stripping it, wipe off all of the big gunk and goo. No sense to put that into your ultrasonic cleaner because it is going to circulate it. So if you have large chunks, carbon, sludge, whatever, get some shop rags, wipe all that stuff off, throw it in the ultrasonic. And you can do a rinse too ahead of time. Like there was one time I had a gun so gunky and full of sand and grit that I basically just took all the major components, sprayed it with chlorine-free brake cleaner or carb cleaner. You get it at Walmart. Make sure you get the chlorine-free stuff. And I just basically hosed it all down to get all that big gunk, and then I threw it in the ultrasonic cleaner now. That was when I was working for a different shop and I had access to a huge ultrasonic cleaner. Right now I have smaller ones, and I would like to get a big ultrasonic cleaner, but then I just have to do it manually. But sometimes doing that quick rinse does a really good job. And then, believe it or not, even though WD-40 is a horrible lubricant, WD-40, the WD stands for water displacement. So if you do use ultrasonic cleaners or water cleaners or whatever, you need to displace the water to make sure the water is gone. WD-40 does a great job at that, but just make sure to clean all of that off and then use the appropriate lubricant or rust preventative. And then is an air compressor helpful? It can be. Keep in mind it can also blow the gunk further deeper into crevices and stuff, so just make sure you know where you're blowing. I'm just going to leave that one alone. But just make sure that you're using it properly and not overdoing it. And if you are going to use it, probably be best to detail strip so you can make sure that the air and gunk is exiting. So, but I do use my ultrasonic cleaner and an air compressor often in the shop. All right, this one is from Derek. Just put a Rise Armament 3.5 pound trigger in AR. Love it. And have I ever tried that type? I have only played with them at trade shows, but they felt good, but I have not used one personally. But I believe, I don't know if Rise is the OEM, or I know the OEM that's making them for Rise, some sort of connection, and I've used another trigger that has some sort of relationship with Rise Armament, and it was a very good trigger. So that's my limited experience, but if it works for you, man, if it's reliable, rock on. And if it's a good trigger and runs, then I would just say keep running it. This one is from Thomas. Because 30-06 is impossible to find right now, and might be for a long time, want to get into shooting 224. I'm assuming you're talking about 224 Valkyrie. He has a full chassis with his Savage, and he's wondering if he can get a 224 barrel and install a trigger. Would that be it? Obviously you would need magazines, but you would also need a new bolt. The bolt face, I believe, on the 224 Valkyrie is different than the 30-06, but I'd have to double check. But you might potentially need a new bolt, and then obviously a new barrel, and then make sure that it's, you know, headspace checks accordingly. But yeah, magazines, and believe it or not, there was a lot of guys making Savage long action guns, and then they were turning them into various short action calibers. I knew one shop that specialized in it back in the day, and I don't know if they're still in business anymore, but they would take these certain generation of Savage long actions because they were known for being really good actions, and they would turn them into like 223 Prairie Dog guns and stuff, 22 250. So you could very easily do that. Magazines, probably going to need a new bolt, and then obviously the barrel. This one is from Scott. This is a Honda question. What a great ride. Where did you get the side panels that cover up the hole in the back doors? I have a 2021. Love the idea. What I did is I went to my dealer, and on the Limited and Deluxe, they actually come with those body panels. They're called rear door color panel, and you can get them in a variety of colors. Here's the trick. Figure out what color you want, and then try to find what year that color was available. So for me, I converted my machine from, it originally came in red. It was a 2019 that came in red, and I wanted it to go to gray, and they came out with gray, and I believe it was from a 2016 or 17. So then I found that part number, that SKU, and then I was able to order it. But there's different colors. There's blue, white, yellow, brown, green, camouflage, red. Otherwise, guys are just getting them and painting them as well. But it's the rear door body panel, and they make front ones as well. But if you wanted to get it to match your machine, just find the Deluxe or LE version of your machine, and then make sure you get the appropriate color. And then there's now even a company selling the little hood pin kits. So even though I listed them in my Amazon article, which you can check out the UTV videos and stuff up there, there's a company that's making them in a pre-packaged kit as well. But I think you can save a little bit of money by getting them individually. I'm not for sure what their price point is. But yeah, they work awesome. They work absolutely great. All right, this will not quite last. I lied. We got a few more. This one is from Bob. Bob has a few here as well. I've been noticing that the turret increments for LPVOs are usually half MOA for MOA, as opposed to what was the more typical quarter MOA. Even though LPVOs are getting that 1 to 10, it seems to have that larger adjustment. Is a turret with a larger increment less expensive to produce than the smaller? Is the larger turret increment considered sufficient for LPVOs? As manufacturers stretch the magnification of LPVOs, do you think smaller would be more prevalent? Look forward to the QA every month. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Bob. So LPVO, for those of you guys that don't know, is low power variable optic, and it generally refers to scopes in the 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 1 to 8, and now 1 to 10 range. And pretty soon, probably even more. Who knows? I'm guessing before we know it, there'll be a 1 to 12 or something like that on the market, or a 1.5 to something. But generally, yes, some of them are half or 0.2 milliradian instead of the typical quarter MOA or 0.1 milliradian. And generally, is it sufficient? Most likely, yes. We're talking about moving your group a ½ inch at 100 yards, and are a lot of shooters capable of holding ½ inch groups at 100 yards with their AR? Debatable, right? So would I love to see more fine-tuned? Yes, and I'm sure it is a cost. I'm sure it's an efficiency thing. So I don't know all the reasons how much money it actually saves or anything like that. But is it enough to make me cringe? Nope, it's not. I still have plenty of scopes that have 0.2 MRAD or ½ inch, half MOA click adjustments, and they work in 0 just fine. So no worries about that. And then, is it considered sufficient? Yeah, it is. you're still fine. Let's be honest, most ARs, even with good quality ammo, are still gonna be considered a really good AR if they're sub a minute, let alone half. And if you're shooting an AR that's a half-minute AR, it's probably more of a SPR, varmint gun, match gun, something like that, and you can adjust it with those increments and go from there. So I think it would be fine. Do I think it's going to become more prevalent? I hope so, but we'll see what happens. So I'm looking forward to checking out a new 1-8 that hasn't hit the market yet. I haven't gotten the sample of that, but I'm really looking forward to check it out. I've checked out some of their other products and I'm very impressed. That's a little clue. You can probably figure out who it is, but I'm hoping that that'll be a cool option as well for the market, because in my opinion, the perfect LPVO still does not exist. I know. You think, but what about the Collis? I love it. It's great. And I don't have the 1-8, but I have the 1-6, and it's pretty awesome. What about the Vortex 1-10? I love it. It's great, but it's still not quite perfect. Last question, then we're gonna give away our prize. This is from Manuel. I've been watching the program for quite a while and I'd love your opinion on something. I'm torn between the Voodoo 22 and the Anschutz 1710. Just wondering if you had to do one or the other, which would you go with? Great question. Did you see that? What are you doing? What are you doing? Man, puppy dogs. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to leave that in. I could edit that out and I'm not going to. But anyways, back to the question. Minnesota's Precision Power couple, Justin and Ruth, they both shoot Anschutz, and I'm not sure which model they shoot, but they love them. And there is no doubt an Anschutz is a good quality rimfire gun. I mean, they know how to build a 22, right? I still personally, for me, would pick my Voodoo. Now, here's the deal. I know some people have had Voodoos with, a couple of issues where they've had to go back. I get it. However, speaking on my personal experience, my Voodoos have ran and shot great. I have a Voodoo V22. I have a 360, which I'll have a review coming out with probably in the next month or two, wrapping that up. I got to get a couple more shots done and edited. Love it. And for my style of shooting, where I'm shooting 22s, I want it to feel as much like my centerfire gun as possible, and the Voodoo does that really well. Plus we have their magazines, which work really well. They use the same bottom metal, the same mag pouches, stuff like that. And again, it feels and is set up like the centerfire counterparts that I know and love. So that, for me, is my preference. Voodoo customer service is absolutely committed to making sure customers are taken care of. They have great warranty, tech support. They have parts availability. They're a United States company. Now, Anschutz, they're trying to get more of a footprint in the US, but I don't know how easy it is to get warranty work done if it has to go back overseas, or, parts, things like that. And they don't quite have as much modern shooter requirement type stuff that, maybe the Voodoo does, as far as like stock availability and stuff like that. Now, that being said, the Anschutz stocks that I've played with are very comfortable, and I believe Manners is going to be making an Anschutz stock. But if you wanted something that truly replicates your centerfire gun, then the Voodoo is the option. And like I said, there's a lot of people winning matches with Voodoos, and I don't know, I've just been super happy with mine. You can check out my Voodoo V22 review right up there, and again, the 361 is coming out soon. So that being said, that should cover everything. Again, I do appreciate you guys watching. If you guys like the content, again, please like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you check out all of our social media outlets, and make sure you check out wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the QA with your podcast. I don't know, I'm not used to saying that. That's going to take some practice. Make sure you check out our webpage for new articles and information as well. I'm just waiting for my internet to load here so I can pick our random number for today's winner. I'm going to go ahead and post the rules. And that way you guys can make sure you're familiar with those. And our random number generator is number 8. Number 8 is the winner, which is Bob from PA. So Bob, I will be getting in touch with you to, or actually Eric, somebody will be getting in touch with you to make sure you get your prize from Lucky Shot. Again, guys, if you want to see your question, make it on the show, the best way is to email us. That email address is shown below, theqa@gunsandtactics.com. Please email us. I look forward to seeing you next month for another episode of the QA. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. We work really hard to make content that we hope you as a shooter would enjoy. Subscribe to our channel, check out our featured videos and playlists, and if you have a question firearms related, go ahead and send an email to the address shown on the screen to be entered into our monthly QA series.